A dazzling show of lightning lit up Edinburgh's sky this weekend, so I'm going to read you a story I could have given more thought to. Hi, this is Half-Baked Tales, where I write and read one halfway thought-through short story every week. They're not always good, and that is the point. Last week, we enjoyed a bit of mythical fantasy mixed in with some family drama. We met Tara, a priestess about to make a dire sacrifice. Go back and listen to Pious Betrayal if you missed it. This week, we're sinking into some horror as our protagonist, Henry, is ensnared by a ghoulish creature in the night. Stick around after the story for a breakdown on this week's writing process and the media that I've been inspired by. Prepare for some spooks. Here's Half-Baked Tale number 35, Pleasing the Panic. An empty, grassy field at dusk seemed a safe enough passage for a middle-aged man. At least that's what Henry reasoned. Considering the recent disappearances, it would have been more ideal if he had crossed the stretch of land between town and home a few hours earlier. But Annabelle's papers had needed to be postmarked before the end of the business day today, and she'd only told him so late in the day. A memory of his sister's disappointed face haunted his mind. He was still scolding himself for disagreeing with her earlier this afternoon. What had come over him? What would he possibly be without Annabelle? She's so forgiving of his stupidness, carelessness, and laziness. He couldn't possibly hope for another person in this wide world to accept him as she does, as only a sister can. A small voice at the back of his mind spoke up. Then why hadn't she asked you to deliver the papers yesterday? Henry smacked the side of his head, as though to dislodge the rogue thought. Shame began to ripple through his body and well up in his eyes as tears. Why is he like this? So contrarian and ungrateful. He resolved to make it back to the house with excess time to get a start on the chores for tomorrow. A darkening bit of land will not be the last straw to convince his sister how unworthy he is. His walk across the field forces thoughts of the disappearances into his head. They have been numerous. Henry and Annabelle know of 3 others in their section of the village alone who have gone missing without a trace. But in the wider town, the numbers hike up to 15 in the past 3 months. There's never a trail nor evidence of violence. The common factors are the late hours at which the victim has gone out alone and a single personality trait described by their loved ones: paranoid. Perhaps being extra wary of danger placed them in a more opportune state to run into it. Henry scolds himself again as thoughts of Annabelle accusing him of paranoia intrude on his mind. She is right. Nothing would happen to him of all people. This fear is a symptom of selfishness, and he resolves, for the 10th time this week, to work on that awful personality trait of his. Halfway across the darkening field now, just a bit further to go till the safety of the village embraced him. Dusk was ebbing on, the bright sky deepening further and further, making the knots in the grass harder to recognize. Henry stumbled as his foot caught on something. A sudden rush of adrenaline spiked his blood pressure, and he increased his gait with his jaw clenched tight. Just then, the lamppost marking the pathway to his home switched on, the signal that dusk was transforming into twilight. He was ashamed at the cowardice of his relief, but he sped on in the direction of home. Too fast. It was his own fault when he tripped again. This time, he didn't catch himself. He'd stepped into something which took a firm hold on his ankle, causing him to fall, crashing to his knees and hands. Adrenaline pumped through him again, and he grunted with frustration at himself. But when he tried pulling his foot from whatever it had snagged on, the snagging pulled back. Henry's head turned, and he locked eyes with a pale-faced, blue-lipped, dirty corpse who was holding his ankle like a vice. Sweat broke out all down his back, and unintelligible whimpers escaped his mouth as he kicked at the hands to release him. Once freed, he scurried backwards until he met another unmoving mass with long hair and bluer lips than the one he'd just fled. Vomit bubbling in his stomach, he froze in place, then slowly moved to a standing position, not daring to take a step into the darkness and encounter another dead person. Once upright, his stomach dropped and a sharp ringing began in his ears. It was absolutely impossible, but the center of the field, empty just moments ago, was covered with corpses. The ringing in his ears growing louder, Henry revolved around himself, taking care not to venture away from the safety of his current patch of grass. There must be an explanation, something he wasn't thinking of. He was so terrible for overlooking important things. His eyes jumped between each body, and he counted 15 of them. The darkness was properly settled now, the only light coming from the sliver of moon and the distant lamppost. Henry traced the lines of light he could see between the bodies, searching for a path to escape. Escape from what? There was no danger to him here, just dead people, people who might need help. He didn't even know if they were really dead. Once again, he was too cowardly to take action and check. Henry's breathing was coming fast and thick through his mouth, and he clamped his fists to his head, willing his mind to be better and tell him what he was supposed to do. The voice of Annabel resounded through his mind. "You're pathetic," it said, and Henry agreed. In front of him, the darkness shifted, and the moonlight revealed a 16th body, not dead, not collapsed on the ground, but alive and sitting up. It was bent over one of the corpses, its back to Henry. The knot in Henry's stomach unclenched as relief washed over him, and he stumbled towards his unknown savior. "Are they okay?" Henry stammered. "I found them like this. Should I go get help?" As Henry spoke, the figure turned its head slowly to look over its shoulder. Though the light was catching on the face of every corpse in Henry's view, it seemed to avoid the figure entirely. It was doused in darkness, only made visible by a slight silhouette. Its features were indiscernible, though Henry could have sworn it was wearing a bowler hat. It did not answer Henry's questions, and the knot in his stomach pulled tight again. "My sister is waiting. If I ask her, then she might know what to do," Henry stammered. At that, the figure stood, suddenly upright. The edges of its being shifted strangely, like a formless blob in the darkness. It moved towards him, and some part of Henry's brain told him to run, but none of his muscles would listen. Tears were filling his eyes as the figure reformed, stepped into a clearer light, and Henry saw the face of his sister staring back at him. "Annabel?" Henry squeaked. He collapsed to his knees, cowering at the figure's feet. "What do we do? What do we do? I'm sorry, Annabel. I'm sorry," he cried. "There might be something you can do," the figure replied in Annabel's voice. "Something I need." It leaned down and trapped Henry in its gaze. "Unless you're too cowardly." Henry shook his head furiously, seeking in the figure's eyes for some hint of what was going on, or what would happen next. "You wouldn't say you're more important than any of these people, would you?" the figure said, motioning to the corpses lying on the ground. Henry continued the shaking of his head, tears falling down his cheeks. "Well, If you agree to stay here with me, then I can let them all go. What do you say?" Henry didn't understand the request, but agreeing seemed like what Annabel wanted of him, so he nodded. "Yes?" the figure prodded. "Yes," Henry blurted. Then the figure touched his chest, and the darkness that had spread away from it rejoined. It poured around Henry, pulling him down into the ground, lodging him there, slowly sucking the color from his skin and turning his lips as blue as the corpse's were. He lies there still and waits for Annabel, not daring to move until he feels the approval of her eyes on him. But she never comes. Henry's sister, who was lying peacefully in bed when her brother stepped foot on that darkening field, mourned her brother, grew old, then died. Around the field, a city developed. Houses encroached further and further towards where Henry lays. A park was built up around him, yet still he survived. He's been here years, centuries even, kept alive by the darkness which had ensnared him, visible only ever at twilight to those who live in the shadow of fear, and he waits to be found. That was Half-Baked Tale number 35, Pleasing the Panic. This story is an expansion of a previous Half-Baked Tale, number 26, The Saint, in which the blue-lipped corpse of a man appears to a young woman who's alarmed to find the corpse, impossibly, is still alive. I wrote The Saint based on a pile of bricks and tarpaulin in my local park, and had always planned to expand the storyline, exploring how the saint ended up eternally dead in a local park, and this was my first attempt. Just like last week's story, Pious Betrayal, I decided to expand backwards to discover more about what old story or old event is pulling the modern narrative forward. For both Pious Betrayal and this week's story, that meant establishing a lore and identifying what the problem is. A holy cave being desecrated, and a strange shadow ensnaring panicked locals. I think ensnare is my word of the week. I've been using it a lot. I thought Henry's journey would be the origin story of this curse that kidnaps people and keeps them undead, but I couldn't find my way there. There's still questions on the origin of the entity that traps him. Not ensnare, traps. I found a synonym. What has developed instead is potentially a link of these occurrences that I can trace back to the igniting story. I happen to include that the shapeless form was wearing a bowler hat. That was just like happenstance. I was like, It was a way to establish that it's definitely not Annabelle, just someone wearing her face or something wearing her face. And now I'm thinking that bowler hat can be a jumping off point to decide what happened before Henry's encounter. Who is this bowler hat person? Who was this entity targeting with their face? I did some very light reading, very light Googling on people-pleasing and the characteristics of abused people to form Henry's personality. That's the heart of the story. That the thing that I'm trying to explore is the impacts of being a people pleaser, of the toll that never taking care of yourself ends up taking on you. I ended up going in a bit deeper and went with how people-pleasing is a side effect of abuse. An abused person tends to have low self-worth, is always trying to put the needs of others, especially their abuser, above all else. And I think the entity, this monster that I'm creating here, preys on those characteristics to get whatever it is he wants or it wants from its victims, which I still don't entirely know. Maybe the entity is parasitic and needs life forms to sustain itself over the years, so it keeps its prey just enough alive. I think it was a TikTok I saw recently that mentioned a type of parasitic spider or bee or or something, it was either a spider or a bee, that keeps a caterpillar alive, basically torturing it while it feeds off of it. It's very freaky. So, some media that went through my head and informed my direction for the story this week. First, I gotta mention the TV series From, which just finished up its 4th season. Absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend. I've been talking about it a lot. From deals in cycles of story and how one original cycle affects a later cycle. I don't want to give spoilers. I'm absolutely obsessed with analysis videos of From, so it's obviously going to be impacting my own storytelling. I used The Woodsman from Over the Garden Wall. Over the Garden Wall is a kids' single series program following 2 brothers who get lost in a magical forest. The Woodsman, the character the Woodsman, is stuck in the forest himself, chopping down trees to keep alight a lantern which contains the soul of his dead daughter. Yes, this is a kid show. But the twist is that the Woodsman was being manipulated into aiding the very entity that killed his daughter. When writing Henry's personality traits and journey, my goal was to align him with this oblivious devoutness that the Woodsman displays. I wanted Henry to be someone who gives up anything for others at great harm to himself. I don't think I succeeded in this as much as I would like to. I think I ended up really leaning into what I was reading about the impacts of abuse. So I think that just gives me an idea of what threads I should pull on next for developing Henry further. Another bit of inspiration comes from the book series Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, which is about a coffee shop where you can travel back in time. There is a character in it, they refer to her as the ghost or a ghost, who forever sits in the very chair that sends people back in time. Customers have to wait for her to get up, which happens once a day, so that they can use that chair to travel through time. The ghost was created because she was a customer herself, who time traveled but didn't return in time. So she's cursed with being stuck in that chair forever. Not too much in terms of theme, but the curse of being stuck is what had me coming back to that character over and over. I want to write about a curse here, and I want to know what that curse is, what it has to do with the entity. Is the entity the wrong direction that I'm going in? How can I tie that back to the symptoms of abuse that I've been thinking about? Lots going on in the head. If you enjoy these podcasts, please like, follow, comment, and share. Even a quick review on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube is really huge in getting the podcast to new audiences. Or go ahead and recommend it to a friend who loves audiobooks or who loves random shite talked by a person who just loves being imaginative. That's the whole reason we're here, is just working on that imagination. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next week.